Hi, everyone, and welcome to our July 2022 edition of Why Can't We Be Friends? We are in partnership with Dell Medical School Community Driven Initiatives. And this month, our topic is banned books and how they impact people who are, in particular, people who are marginalized and just everyone in general as well. We felt like talking about this is timely right now, considering what is going on. And as usual, we have our Slido link in the chat. This is a great time for everyone to click that link and jump in there. And there are already a couple of questions. So if you want to vote on questions that have been asked or ask your own questions, this is the place to do it. We do not use our chat box for asking questions. But we do provide you with the link to where you can get to. Once you're in that link, it's easy to kind of go back and forth from, that particular page to the little Zoom icon so you can go back in between. So right now I invite everyone to go ahead and check out that link so that they can ask any questions or vote on any questions that they would like to be asked. I'm going to go ahead and let the panelists introduce themselves for this evening's topic.
All right, I'll start. I'm Connie Barber. I'm a retired librarian. My entire adult life was in one library or another. I received a master's degree in library science from the University of Denver in 1976, so I've been around a while. The first half of my career was mostly in the public library, a couple of short stints in community colleges. About halfway through my career, I decided the schools were a good fit. So I went through a program for teaching certification, became a certified school librarian, and also certified in other areas of teaching like English as a second language, history, geography, a number of different subjects. But then I spent 21 years in a high school library, and the majority of my career was in Houston. So I retired 7 years ago and moved to Austin when my daughter and her husband had twins. So I came out to help with babies. And I've done various little part-time jobs since then.
Great.
Hi, I'm Josie Talbot. I live in Georgetown, Texas. I am a very avid reader and enjoy libraries. I hate banned books. I've been a volunteer in public libraries, in elementary school and public libraries. And right now I'm a member of the Friends of the Georgetown Public Library Board and a membership chair. I'm a retired state employee, so I have more time to volunteer in libraries.
You're up, Spoon.
Okay, I'm Kenneth Witherspoon. Everybody who knows me as Spoon. To be very, very brief, I'm interested in this topic because in terms of what's going on currently with the banning of books, one of the things that I remember most is that there's an African saying that says, when two bull elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. And in the case of the banning of books, I think that it's children that suffer. I am here to speak for them. I've worked with kids since 1972 when I was in the early childhood education program at Vassar College. And when it comes to books being banned, I've discovered that it really doesn't matter to kids because kids will read the books. And that has been my experience my entire life. I have dealt with parents and churches and organizations, and I tell people that I've suffered the wars of the supernatural in Shakespeare and why certain plays can't be read. I've also, I got to watch the Harry Potter Underground Express because the book was banned, or it wasn't banned, but many people spoke out against them. And I saw kids during lunchtime reading parts of the book to other kids who were not allowed to take it home. I've done the Huckleberry Finn thing. And I worked in a school called Akatink Academy, which was for learning disabled and emotionally disturbed children. And when I was there, I had the magical Our Bodies, Ourselves. What happened was parents wanted the school to teach sex education. Surprisingly enough, none of the psychologists or none of the counselors wanted to teach it, so they asked me. I said no, because I just realized that teaching sex education to blonde-haired, blue-eyed Virginia children was not a place I wanted to be. But children still had questions. So what I did is I had the book and I stuck it in a drawer. And I call it the magical book because young ladies and young men would come in with questions. I said, I won't discuss it with you, but here's the book. And the book would magically disappear whenever a parent came in upset because there was a sex education book that was not one that they thought was proper. And it would always manage to disappear from my drawer and show back up. And I've never known, I sort of guessed, but people just watched out for me, but they also watched out for the kids. And the kids will read the material. It's nice if they have people with whom to discuss it. And everything else, I'll deal with the questions. Okay.
Okay, so I just want to remind all of the attendees that there is a link in the chat, and you can go ahead and click that link, and it's going to pop you over to where the questions are so that you can both ask questions or vote on the questions. And I am actually in Slido now looking at the questions, and there are about 5, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions. You could add more to that, and there are some questions that are being voted on. So I am looking through here, and so I'm going to ask one of the questions that hasn't been voted on yet, just because I think it's a good introductory question, which is, what types of books are being banned? So each of you might have your own experience or thoughts or titles that you want to talk about that you are familiar with. If you're not familiar, that's okay. If you want to talk about the types and generalities, that's okay too. And so that is the first question that was asked. What types of books are being banned?
Well, of course, sex is the big flashing red light. It's very common that if there's even a page or two in a book that is about something else entirely, that can cause it to come to the attention of people who are concerned about that sort of thing. And things have changed recently. It's alarming that there is so much more protests and the ways that they've gone about it have changed as well. In the past, generally it would be one individual coming in and saying, I don't think this book should be in the library. And there would be a standard procedure. We were encouraged not to get into a back and forth with the person at the time. Give them a form to fill out, ask them to be sure that they've read the entire book and not just the parts that they were concerned about. And then fill out the form, and it would be arranged that there would be a review committee. It usually never got past that. Once they were being asked to read the entire book instead of just the pieces they objected to, they just kind of forgot about it. In all of my career, I probably had 7 or 8 times that people would come in and say, I don't think this book should be in the library. It never got to the point where there was a committee meeting to review the book. But times have changed. It's going much farther these days, and the approach is different with people, rather than coming in and individually saying, I'm concerned about this book. It's, oh, there's pornography in the school library, and this is being put out by school board members and governors. And so it's taking a very different approach these days, and that's a big concern. Plus the fact that it has more than quadrupled just in recent years. So it has taken a different tack.
I don't have a list of banned books in front of me right now, but you'd be surprised. They go all the way across the spectrum. Almost every genre has a banned book, including classic books. I have seen banned books that I had to read as part of my English classes in high school are now banned. It doesn't make any sense. It offends someone, and they feel like they have to stand up and do something.
See, I have, one of the things that I did is I was a playwright in school for Center Stage Theater in Maryland, in Baltimore. So I went to a lot of schools in Maryland, and I also worked in Northern Virginia. And I think the 2 things that I remember most were there was a children's book about an indigenous young lady, and it was banned because of the phrase, her breasts were like 2 teepees. And I never really got over that. And also Charlotte's Web, I discovered, was disrespectful to God because it had a non-human talking. And there was a lot of that, particularly in Northern Virginia. I've been asked to create a Shakespeare curriculum for kids, which did not include supernatural. If you're familiar with Shakespeare, that's kind of hard to do. But the one that they seemed to accept, which I found strange, was Romeo and Juliet. Hamlet's ghost, the ghost of Hamlet's father upset them, but 2 kids committing suicide didn't. So go figure. One thing I will say is that we had the forms that you had to sign. And it was interesting because when the kids brought back in the forms, they spent all of their time trying to get their hands on copies of the books that their parents wouldn't let them read, or having lunchtime conversations with kids who had read the book. Tell me about the book. And I heard some wonderful praises of a lot of books because they'd sit around the lunch table. So as I said, the youth are resilient. They will find their way. So
And
But
that's a very valid observation, that often it's because of the protest that it brings it to the child's attention. I mean, if it were on the shelf among the thousands of books in the library, they probably never would have even come across it. But the fact that, ooh, there's something juicy in here, we need to find out about it, it brings it to the child's attention.
So I just kind of scrolled through the banned, censored, and challenged books list on Goodreads because I was curious about it, and I was surprised. I like literally just did it, and then I was like, "Why is all of Shel Silverstein's books are banned? That's their poems. I mean, I don't remember any sex in there.
yeah.
It's just crazy."
The Giving Tree
Yes,
was actually banned in California because it was found, they thought it was sexist and demeaned women. It's okay. It's not really my reading of the book. I guess I can sort of see what it is that you're saying, but books get banned for a lot of reasons. I've also done the Huckleberry Finn defense, where parents did not want Huckleberry Finn read. And it's sort of, the banning of books is a broad spectrum. When I was in Vassar, I tutored. And the issue that many of my peers had with me was that I was not encouraging the Black students to read enough Black authors. And I explained to them that I was tutoring them to pass the SAT. And at that time in the 70s, there weren't a whole bunch of Black books that were on the AP exams for literature. So,
Yeah, I was looking in the Anne Frank's Diary
oh
is
yes,
a banned book.
yes.
It was just, yeah. So, like you were saying earlier, Josie, a lot of the books that I read in high school are banned books. So, yeah, it's just, it's very interesting. I'm going to pop back over to Slido and see, let's see. So it says, what are each of your individual thoughts on the current situation with books being banned? And sometimes it's okay if it's kind of repetitive. Don't worry about that. So what are your individual thoughts on the current situation of books being banned?
Anytime you ban a book, you're closing a mind. And I think so many things that are banned are banned for political reasons and not necessarily for the content. All these books that they're complaining about now, about Black history and how it makes some people feel bad, but it's still part of our history. It's still something we need to learn about. It's something we need to our children need to know about, because we can't cure racism until we face it and realize what it is in our community. Yeah, the 1619 Project shouldn't be banned.
And as I was saying earlier, the approach has changed with these people getting up in school board meetings and putting this out rather than coming and talking about it individually, because so often what they're objecting to is a very, very minor part of the entire work or a misinterpretation. So I was surprised to see In the Night Kitchen was a Maurice Sendak book that was published in 1970. I mean, it's been around a long time, and there have been protests from time to time about it. It's coming up again. And the entire objection is one picture of a little boy without any clothes on. One picture in the entire book, and there are people that feel it should be banned. So people have their own personal agendas. I know a friend of mine who was in the elementary library had a woman come to her wanting to ban all fairy tales because she had just become a stepmother and she felt that stepmothers got bad press. So she wanted all fairy tales banned. So it can be very, very subjective. People will pick out just one or two little things and try to make a big deal out of it.
See, the thing that I am most concerned about, I am also an advocate for abused children. And I have discovered so many cases because of the books that they read, which resonated with the children. And many of those are being banned, along with the LBGT books, along with the history books. And in one level, it makes me angry. Okay, just because I don't think that any book should be banned, if a child can read it. But on the other level, I say, you know what? Ban them all, because the minute I tell your child that that book is banned and ask if he wants a copy, he's going to get one. And you may not know it. It'll be like the magazines under the mattress that my older brother had, which the ministers railed against, but he managed to sneak them into the house anyway. It's in many ways, it makes children curious about things. I think that in the church that I grew up in, one of their biggest mistakes was telling me that, they banned a lot of books, but Elmer Gantry. And I said, okay. And I immediately read it. And I think that that's the worst thing that the deacons ever did in that church.
Okay, I am going to pop over to Slido again. Let's see. So this question is, why do you think they are even banning books? So why do you think that books are being banned?
Well, Josie mentioned earlier, politics. People have their own agenda and they think they know the way it should be, and they're going to do what they can to impose their view of the world. So that's a lot of it. And people do, they take a very subjective view many times. Like I mentioned with the mother who thought stepmothers got a bad rap in fairy tales. Another objection I had was to the Da Vinci Code. And that objection was made by a science teacher who told me specifically that the reason she became a science teacher was so that she could teach the children who were coming up that evolution is not correct and creationism is the true way of being. And so there was something in the Da Vinci Code about, I don't know, some code in the way the church was laid out or something. I don't know what exactly. But again, very subjective. It was this woman's particular agenda to want to be the one to, and it's particularly aimed at children. They're wanting to influence children and raise them up to be the way I am.
Mm-hmm. See, I was talking to one of my youngins, and he was talking about just how do you discuss social justice? And what I told them was that I have, in my life, what I've experienced is that you can discuss things with people up to their level of discomfort, and up to their self-interest. And after that, they cease to hear you. But it's not only that they cease to hear you, they don't want you to even think about or consider it. And it's a lot of it's politics, but a lot of it's individual. I don't believe that. Therefore, I don't want my child to know about that.
So essentially, this is all about the protection of children, the banning of the books. And in the eyes of the
No.
people who,
No,
well, right. No, but I'm saying like in the eyes of the people who want the books banned, they feel like they are protecting children from feeling uncomfortable or being exposed to information that they find to be dangerous.
I think that the latter is probably more true. Okay, it's about control, and it
Yeah.
really, and it's, as I said, it's like you can control your. Actually, I don't think you should work to control anybody, but I tell people that you can control your child until the point that you can, because then everything that you've said, even the good things that you've said, they will find suspect. So you're sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face.
And that can definitely be a factor of, not wanting the children to hear or learn things that don't agree with their viewpoint. But at the same time, I'm thinking about one objection I had from a student who was Muslim. And I had a copy of the Quran, but he didn't want me to have that copy of the Quran. His perspective was that it was a translation, and no translation could be as accurate as the original Arabic. And so the only copy of the Quran that I should have in the library, which should be in Arabic. Well, he was probably the only student in the school who could read Arabic. So it really would have been detrimental to people who were interested in the Islam. It would have cut them out, but that was his perspective, and he felt very strongly that that's the way it should be.
Okay, I'm going to pop over and see where we're at. Are there any communities that you feel are particularly affected by banning books? Any communities of people that you believe are particularly affected by the banning of books?
children.
Mhm.
Children.
Yes.
Children?
As an adult, if they ban a book, I've got the funds to go out and buy one.
Right.
It's not going to stop me, but a child may not.
Do
Yeah,
you think, go ahead, Spoon.
No, it's the children who are hurt most by this, because the banning of the books takes place in several communities across the country, but all of the kids in each of those communities are affected when books are banned.
Yeah. Do you think it would be fair to say that all children are affected, but there are some children who would be more affected, like say members of, like children who already identify with the LGBTQI spectrum of gender identity, or children of color, or children from a Jewish background? Do you think that those children in particular would be more affected, or do you think it's just all the same across the board?
Okay, different people, based upon their experiences, different people will be affected in different ways, but I really see it as more global than that. I see it across the board. I was thinking of mouse. And when mouse was banned, I was really very, very curious. I understand people who are Holocaust deniers, right? But then they said it's because the people in the book are naked. And I went, have you seen the book? They're mice. No, but they were deadly serious about that. It was the nudity in mouse. And
The
I'm like,
nude mice were a problem
yes,
because the people in the book were mice.
yes,
And one thing I have to wonder in that situation is how many of the people who are objecting have actually ever even seen the book?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard it has naked characters.
yes.
Well, have you even seen it? They're mice. So, people will latch onto things
Yes.
and without really knowing what they're talking about. Another term that I think has caused problems recently is the term graphic novel. A graphic novel is basically a cartoon, a comic book with a little bit of a plot to it. But that word graphic, people instantly think graphic sex. And actually, I was in Austin and KVUE did a news broadcast about protests at one of the school districts and how they were concerned about graphic novels. And they didn't make any attempt to expand or define. It was just graphic novels. And I actually jumped on my computer and did a message to the newscast. And I said, you need to clarify that graphic novels are not graphic sex, that the term means basically a comic book. And they did come back about 10 minutes later and they said, the concern is about graphic novels, which are books with lots of illustrations. Okay, well.
Okay, now I have to give a shout out to my kindergarten teacher, Miss Bailey. Make a long story short, when my friends and I, we all were children of sharecroppers, came up and we lived in Baltimore and we went to kindergarten. About half of the kindergarten class was reading between the 3rd and the 6th grade reading level, because that's what we did, because books were cheap and the library was open. So we spent a lot of time reading when we were very, very young. And there were people who did not like us reading books. My kindergarten teacher, I think she had an easy class because 3 days a week, we got to go to the school library. I loved kindergarten and spend like half a day there. And my mother came to a parent-teacher conference, and she asked about the books and the reading because of what the minister said. And I sat there at the age of 5 and I went, okay, this is my make or break moment. And she said that let them read whatever it is that they want to read, they need to read. And then my mother said the magic word, what about comic books? And I thought that my comic book days were over. And she said, no, she said, let them read what they want to read. And then she said, I like Little Lulu. And I just went, oh, which is why I fell in love with Miss Bailey.
My stepfather threw my comic books away when I was a child because he didn't think they were good for me.
Yes.
I had about 50 or 60 comic books I'd been saving, and he threw them all away.
Oh yeah, but I'm afraid that
I never forgave him.
I'm beginning to wonder, because according to the stories I've heard, there are billions of dollars of comic books thrown out in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. I could go to the library and get anything I wanted to the library, but those comic books weren't good for me. And off they went.
Well, now they have comic books at the library.
Yes.
They have whole sections.
Exactly. And in the high school, it was one of the most popular sections.
That's really how my daughter learned to read, was from graphic novels. And she progressed later into chapter books, and now she's at the top of her reading level. And I didn't have a lot of experience with comic books or graphic novels because I never read them or got into them. But I was just happy she was reading. So I was just like, I supported it. I encouraged it. And she hasn't really read a graphic novel in a while, but it was interesting that, Spoon, you had brought up Mouse, because she recently has asked me, can I get a copy of Mouse? And,
Yes.
and it's because, she's 11 and she's hearing about this stuff, right? And then she said, well, Daddy took me to Larkinell, shout out to Larkinell, to get a copy, and they were out. They didn't have any. And so I was just like, okay. And I'll look around and find a copy for her. But then I started also hearing about all kinds of things that are going on now. Like Austin has a summer banned book camp or something, and they're just giving away banned books to kids, parents, whoever wants them. And I think that that's kind of poetic justice for the concept of it.
Yes. Oh, as a matter of fact, may I put a link in the chat?
Of course.
Okay, now I'm going to put a link in the chat, and this link is to, it goes through New York Public Libraries, but there are many libraries involved. And basically, any child who is in any school in the country can get a virtual library card and get an e-edition of any banned book in any region.
The banning made Mouth a bestseller. It was like an instant overnight bestseller. Everybody was automatically out of it. There was one comic book store in Kentucky who raised $17,000 overnight almost to buy copies of Mouse for any child who lived in Kentucky who wanted it.
Okay, and Kelly, I think I have the first two. I'm not certain I still have the third one, so I'll bring them for your little one.
Oh, I'm sure she would love that.
Okay. I want them back though.
Okay. And
Okay.
she's very respectful of her books. She uses bookmarks. She does not understand why people bend pages in books.
There is a banned book.
Books. Spoon book is going to have like every third or fourth page bent.
There is a banned book week in late September every year. And in my years in the high school, every banned book week, I would do a display of banned books. And it would generate some interest, but it's not like the kids were saying, ooh, banned books. These are dirty books. I need to read this. I mean, it was just, another display, and it, as I said, it would generate some interest, but it wasn't appealing to their sense of rebellion or, whatever.
Well, it may be now.
They do now. There are actually clubs on high school campuses to counter out banned books in their school.
I think that leads really nicely into this question, which is, do you think it's different now with all of the technology and social media when books are banned?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we hear about it much faster.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And remember I talked about the lunchroom conversations with books that some kids couldn't take home and read. Now they discuss them online.
Yeah.
And they can actually access them online.
I mean, I'm convinced that my daughter heard about this through TikTok because that's all she does.
Yeah.
I have the TikTok app, so that when my friends send me a TikTok they want me to see, I can look at it. But that's the extent of my TikToking, but it's a big deal. And so, I mean, I think that she's getting a lot of her information from that particular platform. But it doesn't bother me that that's kind of where she's getting the information from. I'm just glad that the information is out there, you know, because I don't remember when I was a kid thinking about banned books or banned books being a big deal. And right now it's just a much bigger deal than when, you know, in my experience of this. And at first I was very concerned about it because of the censorship, because of the, you know, other people's morality being imposed upon me and upon my child is always, you know, kind of an issue for me. And so, you know, it's like, oh no, yeah, we need to really, and I do think it's important to talk about, obviously, because here we are, right? Everybody thinks that this is a timely topic. But then I did kind of see all the things that were happening, like, you know, Spoon's link to this, you know, the New York Library that's like, hey, this is going to be available to anybody. That's new with technology, right? I mean, all these books are a link away now. You don't even have to get a library card or have money. You can just click a link and have interest, right? Or just, you know, there weren't huge organizations just handing out some of the banned books. It wasn't the same, right? This is all kind of a much bigger thing. And Mouse has become an instant bestseller, you know? I mean, so it's been fascinating to kind of watch the evolution of this, because really this started to become a topic a few months ago, like 3 or 4 months ago. And now it's kind of progressed through a couple of things. So.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to just libraries because, as I said, in Baltimore when we were young, there was an onus on books. There was a huge anti-intellectualism. Part of it was the McCarthy era and everything else. But the library was a refuge to us because we went in and we read books and nobody looked at us funny. And at that time, remember in the South, there were libraries that were segregated and basically blacks could not get cards. I was fortunate to be in Baltimore. And, you know, you carried big books and you were black. You were a target for some people. You were uppity or you were above your station. You know, what are you doing reading those books? But you could like sneak into the library, which back in those days was air cooled in the summer, and just spend the day there with your friends. So public libraries played and still play a large part in making certain that books are accessible to kids. And I need to give a shout out and to Georgetown Public Library, which I think is an exceptional library. So.
I think libraries now are suffering somewhat. I mean, so many people are saying, well, why should we spend tax money? I can get everything I need on the internet. And as you mentioned, anti-intellectualism, that's kind of always been a factor.
Yes.
And the social status. There was a time, I think it was like in the late 70s in Houston, when a new public branch was being built. And there were people who showed up to a meeting saying, we don't think renters should be able to get library cards because they don't pay taxes. They don't pay property taxes. Well, of course they do, which just gets filtered through their landlord before it gets to the tax office, but they're paying. It's not the landlord doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But yes, there is somewhat of a factor of that. And libraries are facing some of that. I heard a discussion in Austin. Austin built a beautiful new downtown library. And I heard a radio discussion about why are we spending all this tax money just for a place for homeless people to have a bathroom? You know, so there is that factor.
Yes.
I love that library though, the Austin one. They have a garden on the top.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. Josie, I feel like you were going to say something.
I was, you know, if you think about it, the Georgetown Public Library, and it's the one I'm most associated with right now, is really a community center. You see all kinds of activities going on. There anything from art and craft meetings, the religious groups who have meetings, there are study sessions for people. We've seen tutors have meetings with children who need to be tutored. I mean, it's a community center, really, as much as a library, as much as the books and the media. I mean, you see people walk out there with stacks of videos, all kinds of things.
Yes. As a frugal person, yes, I do love their DVD selection.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to pop back over to Slido. I see a few questions in here. There was a question asked about 5 minutes ago, and I think it would be a good one to add at this point. It says, it's kind of a progression of questions. So it says, who bans the books? What organizations or group of people publish the list? And what gives them the credibility to do so? Who bans the books? What organizations or group of people publish the list? And what gives them the credibility to do so?
It just varies so much. City councils ban books, library boards, school boards ban books, groups of parents whom I really don't believe ever read the books, pick up something off the internet and they ban the books. It is an anti-intellectual fervor, and some people are taking advantage of it, but people are also falling into it because it's, you know, I like what you said, and I don't need to read the book to agree with you, and to go to a school board meeting and say this book should be banned. And their credibility, how about their clout? I think it's more their clout than their credibility.
And I do think social media has had some influence as well.
Yeah.
Because in the past, it would be the one individual coming in and saying, I have this issue with this book. Now there's a Facebook page for Mothers Against Dirty Books. Or, you know, I'm making that up, but
right.
I'll bet
you
there
get
is
the
one.
idea. There probably is one. Yes.
Most of which are published by library associations, like the Texas State Library Association.
So
And
the
I don't think
Texas-
that's not the correct title, but I mean, that's just an example.
Mhm.
It's usually library associations. You may know better than I do, Connie.
Yeah, they do publish them, but part of the reason for that is to make everybody aware.
Yes.
You know, they're not publishing them to say, oh, we need to look at these and see which ones we need to take off the shelf. They're trying to make people aware that there have been challenges to these books.
Yes.
And you need to take a look at this and not just let these people pull all the books off the shelves. That's the reason that American Library Association or Texas Library Association, that's the reason those groups put out the lists.
Yes. And they are not the ones doing the banning.
Exactly.
They're making people aware of the books that have been banned. For instance, in the link that I put there, what I was very impressed with is that because there are lots of books being banned in lots of areas, that they just made the decision. It's like basically any book that's banned anywhere, if you're a student, you can get a card and you can get this ebook from this consortium.
So someone asked the question, what about the Forget the Alamo history book?
I have read that book, and it's actually a very good book. Dan Patrick found out that the authors were having a book signing and kind of a session at the library, at the Bob Bullock Library. And he had the contract canceled. The author could not go into the library and present the book. This is a very well thought out book. It was written by people who are long left Texans. They've been here their whole lives. Their parents have been here their whole lives. They're not somebody who moved in to make trouble. They did things like they went to Mexico and they read the diaries of Santa Anna's generals to get a better balanced view about what actually happened at the library. So much that had happened at the Alamo had become mostly a fable.
Yes.
And it's not true history. It's not really what happened. Everybody thinks the battle actually took place in the chapel. It did not happen in the chapel. The battle, the fighting actually took place in the Long Barracks, which the Daughters of the Texas Revolution destroyed, took down. So it's an interesting view. It's a different view about what happened at the Alamo.
You see, it goes to the history that you need to have in order to feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
So
as a 5th generation Texan, and my daughter's a 6th generation Texan, someone gave me a copy of the book and I haven't read it yet. But I'm very interested to check it out. And I do feel like all of the things around how we look at the Alamo are very interesting. And you know, but I frequently question, you know, the way we write our histories, right? And that was a pretty good long way back there. So I will be very interested to read that. And then of course I think about funny things like, I think it was Ozzy Osbourne that peed on the Alamo and got arrested when he was in San Antonio. And then I read another book about the red light district in Galveston. And I thought it was interesting because according to that book, and you know, just according to that book and the historian who wrote that book, the red light district in Galveston, there were 2 surviving women from the Alamo. It was a mom and a daughter, and the daughter apparently became a very successful madam in Galveston. I thought that was interesting, but that's just my 2 cents about Alamo stuff. But I'm glad I have a copy of that book, and I look forward to reading it.
Mm-hmm.
Another very specific question someone asked was, can they undo the ban on Dr. Seuss books? Can they undo the ban on Dr. Seuss books?
Of course, the thing that runs through my mind is, why are they banning Dr. Seuss? It's one of those things that help children learn to read.
okay, now I'm not certain there really is a ban on Dr. Seuss books.
Okay, that was just the question.
Okay, I'm not certain. What's happened is that they basically researched Dr. Seuss, and he had views which I understand some people did not like, and some I found repugnant, but that really has nothing to do with his books. If that's the case, there's a whole bunch of books I wouldn't read. You know, don't like the authors, but yeah, I still like their work.
I would kind of need to review Dr. Seuss. From high school, I didn't deal with Dr. Seuss that much, but I know there are certain Dr. Seuss books like
Yes.
The Lorax, or that's the one that's jumping to my mind. That, you know, it's people who are anti-environmentalism could object to it for those reasons. that sort of thing. I'm not aware of a general ban on Dr.
Yeah.
Seuss, but I think there are specific books that
Yes.
do raise hackles.
Okay, Chuck, were you saying something?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in real quick. There was not actually a ban on the Dr. Seuss books. His estate pulled some back from publication.
Okay,
So it was a family or an estate decision, not
Okay.
not a banning of as such.
Got it. Thank you,
Thank
Chuck,
you.
for the clarification.
thank you.
So we are getting close to 8 o'clock. And I'm going to ask one final question. And then after that question is answered by all, some, or none of you, depending on if you just want to, if you each just want to leave us all with some final thoughts, that would be great. So the last question for this evening is, who do you think benefits most from the banning of books? Who do you think benefits most from the banning of books?
People who are successful in imposing their own viewpoint. If they manage to get a book banned, then they are successful in not allowing something to be taught or read about or whatever. I mean, if you call that a success.
Okay, and I would say people who can turn it into a political issue to their benefit, or people who can use it to monetize it somehow.
People who want to control what you're allowed to think, what you're allowed to see.
So those are the people who benefit most.
Not the kids.
No.
Not the kids, none of it.
Mm-mm.
Yes.
People who want to impose their values and morality on others.
Yes.
Actually, I'm not certain this, I like the word will, because I'm not certain it's all morality or value based.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
They want our mind closed. We only see what they want us to see.
Yeah, good luck with that. Best of luck to you. So does anybody, if you guys want to leave us with some final thoughts, I would like to thank all of you so much for spending some time with us this evening. I know that everybody is busy. We all have busy lives now that we are out and about kind of in the world again. And I'd like to thank all of the people who came and attended this webinar. We know that, you can really be spending your time doing a great many things, but you chose to tune into this, and that's really important to us. And we really thank you for being here this evening. And with that, I will turn it over to final thoughts from the panelists.
I guess my thought would be that I have, over the past year, been aware of the increasing problem of the banning of books. But preparing for this webinar has made me realize I have just recently moved into a school district, East ISD in San Antonio, that pulled 400 books off of the shelf this past year to review. They did put a lot of them back, but they took a lot of them out. And so it's made me realize I may be retired, but I'm not dead. I need to get more into it.
Okay, I guess, okay.
I would encourage people to read banned books and make up your own mind about them. And if you're concerned about banned books in the community, join your public library, find out what your library needs, and lend a hand, whether it's joining a friends organization, whether it's volunteering at the library, or both. Become involved in your library. We don't want to lose these things. They're very important to the whole community, whether you realize it or not.
Okay, and I would just, my final thought is that if you know children or you see children who like to read, buy them books. Okay, and it may be that, you know, you have a family member who really doesn't want them to read a certain kind of book. Use your imagination and sneak in something. I mean, I'm saying sneak in something that's just to the border of what they will accept, but just let the children know that, you know, reading is a good thing, and I will be there for you if you want to read books. You can always come over to my house and sit down and read a book as long as you don't tell your mom.
I would also say don't be afraid if your kids are into graphic novels. I was a little nervous at first because I didn't know what they were, but it's a great stepping stone for a kid, you know, trying to get to the reading level that, you know, we all hope that they'll get to. So don't let the graphic novels scare you.
Now I have to admit that Classics Illustrated, I don't know if anybody remembers those, but Classic Illustrated took me to the library because I would read those comic books and I could not wait to pick up a copy of Ivanhoe, A Tale of Two Cities. Do you even know what I'm talking about, Kelly?
I know A Tale of Two Cities and Ivanhoe, but I don't know the format that you're talking about.
Actually, look them up online. You can get some reprints now, but Classics Illustrated just jump-started me into literature.
Nice.
I know the best way to get my grandkids to roll their eyes at me is to say, the book is always better than the movie.
Nice. Well, thank you again, everyone, for being here. It is 8:04, and we are going to stop the recording. And I look forward to seeing everybody we're taking August off, I think. And then I will be looking forward to seeing everyone in September. So thanks, everybody. And I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.